This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
I put my lips up next to your cheek, pretending to talk privately. Come to the orchard, it's spring. There's wine on your lips and sweethearts, pomegranate flowers. Come to the orchard, it's spring. There's wine on your lips, sweethearts, pomegranate flowers. If you come, these things don't matter. If you don't come, these things don't matter. If you come, these things don't matter. If you don't come, these things don't matter. So come to the orchard. It's spring. There's wine on your lips and sweethearts and pomegranate flowers. Come to the orchard. It's spring. Once I was a rock, and I lived for thousands of years, and then I died, and I became a plant, and I lived for thousands of years, and then I died. Then I became an animal, lived for thousands of years, then I died. Then I became a human being. Tell me, what have I ever lost by dying? So welcome everyone. The title was not chosen by me. It's a pretty good sized title. Rumi and the alchemical fire of the beloved, I think it says. So, wow. Rumi says, I want burning, burning, burning. One of the meanings of burning is Allah, 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 Allah. And it's right here behind the sternum. And it fans, it's like friction right on the heart. And the temperature of the human heart actually increases. Friction. We learned it in junior high science class. Friction creates heat. So burning, Allah, Allah, right there in your heart. Fanning the flames of longing is what Rumi says. We want to fan the flames of longing. Wine on your lips, Allah, Allah, Allah. That's what he's referring to. When you come to the orchard in spring, wow, there's wine on your lips. It's filled with people singing the sacred phrase of devotion. So at some point, I'm going to open up questions a little bit later, but I just wanted to give a little introduction about who Rumi was. He was a great scholar. He had thousands of students. He was the president of the main university in Konya. He was religion and politics were interwoven then, and he was basically what would be like a Supreme Court justice and the main religious figure. I mean, he was a big kahuna, and then he was 40, and then he met Shams, who was the wandering dervish who was his initiator. It also said something about initiatic poets on the flyer, I believe. That word caught my eye. So Shams was his initiator and brought him to an understanding different than the one he had been traveling in previously. Shams took his books and threw them in the well and said, you have been reading for 40 years and you haven't awakened yet. Time to get rid of the books. And Rumi was upset, had lots of students. So Shams said, okay, gets his books out of the well, and they were dry. Or so the story goes in the legend. And so Rumi followed Shams, and through their conversations and Rumi's awakening, the poetry came after that, after he was 40. And the poetry was crafted with Jalaluddin Rumi holding on a pole in the mosque. And if you know this story, bear with me. Some don't. And he would spin. And the whirling dervishes of today are an order that was founded by Jalaluddin Rumi. And he would spin around the pole for what has been described as 24 to 48 hours. And at some point in that process, the poetry poured forth. And it was whispered and hollered and spoken and wept and laughed, and it came out in all forms. And his scribes wrote it down. But it was forthcoming like lava when the volcano goes. Listen to the sound of the reed cut from the bed. Its sounds of longing are to return to its source. Become hollow like the reed. Let the player make beautiful music out of you. The sound of the reed sets to weeping all the women, all the men. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat, as close as your shoulder. Go ahead, look around. If a friend is what you seek, become the friend. If you're looking for a hug, open your arms. Rumi had 5 brother poets. They're called the 6 classic poets of Sufism. They all lived about within 90 years of each other in an area about the size of Jackson County in what's now Persia. And Hafiz is one of them, Sadi, Sinai, Attar, and Omar Khayyam. And I have a couple of Hafiz to share, and also some of Sam Lewis, who is the founder of our particular lineage of Sufism, the dances of universal peace called Sufi dancing, came out of Murshid Sam's inspiration, as did some incredible epic poetry, and I'll share some of that. First, a couple from Hafiz. And while I find it a story of Hafiz, he had a teacher, as is the way in Sufism. His teacher was Murshid. Mu means one who, Rashid teaches. So his Murshid had 11 students. He named them all Hafiz. And at night, after night prayers, they all went to bed in their dorm. They all lived in that day. Those students lived in the Tekka, it's called, the spiritual community house, with their teacher. And after night prayers, the Murshid says down the hallway, Hafiz, Hafiz. Well, there's 11 of them with that name. And the 10 who did not write the Persian before this translation, all, whatever their thinking was, something along the lines of, I'm exhausted. I hope it's a different Hafiz than me. And they all stay there. But this one, he heard his name, and the Murshid was calling. So he went. And they spent the night in in Sobet, which is in Sufism, it's called spiritual conversation. It's where you dive deep. It's conversation, but none of the chit-chat. Next night, after night prayers, Hafiz. Well, the ones who didn't come the first night, well, nothing was said. I didn't go last night. It must not have been me. I'm sleeping again tonight. But this one went again, the only one, all night with his teacher. Night of Sobet. Next night, same thing. Went on for 20 years. And after that, look what can happen. The poetry of Hafiz, a gift to humanity. It's a path of devotion. It's a path of initiation. And Rumi was on that path also. Rumi is owned by no religions of the world, and yet in his life he was a practicing Muslim. I say I was going to read some Hafiz? You say, I say, you say, how can I find God? I say, the friend is the lining in your pocket, the curved pink wall inside your belly. Sober up, steady your aim, reach in, turn the universe and the beautiful rascal inside out. You say, that sounds preposterous. I don't believe God is in there. I say, well then, why not try the Himalayas? You could get naked and pretend to be an exalted yogi and eat bark and snow for 40 years. And you might think to yourself, hey old man, why don't you go shovel snowflakes? Oh, yes. And in Hafiz's similar humorous vein, 10,000 idiots. It's always a danger to aspirants on the path when they begin to believe and act as if the 10,000 idiots who so long ruled and lived inside have all packed their bags and skipped town. It is always a danger to aspirants on the path when they begin to believe and act as if the 10,000 idiots who so long ruled and lived inside have all packed their bags and skipped town. Sometimes a lover of God may faint in the presence. Then the beloved bends and whispers in the ear, "Beggar, spread out your robes. I'll fill it with gold. I've come to protect your consciousness. Where has it gone? Come back into awareness." This fainting is because lovers want so much. A chicken invites a camel into the hen house, and the whole structure is demolished. A rabbit nestles down with its eyes closed in the arms of a lion. There is an excess in spiritual searching that is ignorance. Let that ignorance be our teacher. The friend breathes into one who has no breath. A deep silence revives the listening and the speaking of those two who meet on the riverbank. like the ground turning green inside a spring wind, like birdsong beginning inside the egg, like this universe coming into existence, the lover wakes and whirls in a dancing joy, then immediately kneels down in praise. Well, welcome. There's some non-poetry things that I wanted to share, a couple from the Sufi teacher named Hazrat Inayat Khan. Many of you may have heard of that. In one way, shape, or form, he brought Rumi to the English language in a roundabout way. But before I move into that, are there any questions or anything on people's minds or hearts?
We'd like to know who you are.
Okay, maybe now's the time for that. I'm going to let each one of you say your names because, I mean, while I know your first names, not necessarily so you can say what it is you want, let's all stand up so they can see us. Is that okay with you all? Okay, no compulsion in Sufism. So, my name is Khalil Elliott, and I live right here in Ashland. I have Ashland Sufi Heart Circle. I did bring some cards. If you're interested in what we do, other than just this, you can talk to me either at intermission or afterwards. And my name's Khalil.
I'm Richard, itinerant banjo player.
I'm Renee Laforie, also known as Madhavi.
I'm Cherag, itinerant whatever.
This is a first for us in this form. We haven't done this together before, and so we're just having fun with it and seeing what happens. Anything else?
Just the instruments.
Okay.
Sure. This is an oud from Persia, Middle East, North Africa. Kind of the grandmother of the lutes and guitars. Amazing instrument. Perhaps you'll hear it this evening. This is Bazouki from Greece. 60 staves.
60 what?
Staves of wood. If you want to know how cool you are,
I think there's a Rumi poem about
It's
that.
it's like a big mandolin. 4 double strings.
And the other one?
This is the consort of the sitar from India. This is sarod. Considered the male, as you see. 27-string fretless banjo. That's the traditional Delta Indian music. This is the tambura, the drum from India that goes with sitar and sarod. These flutes are shakuhachi. It's the alto. The Shruti box drum.
And its name that you use for it?
Tar.
Tar?
It's also considered, sometimes called the frame drum.
Yeah, it's like there are various sorts of frame drums. This was modeled after.
I have a question about the male sitar. of the sitar there?
Sarod.
Sharod. Sharod.
Sarod.
Sarod. Is it amplified because of the gourd-like?
Oh, this thing?
Yeah, it's not gourd. It's not a gourd, but is it amplified that way?
It's a metal bell. It's called. Sitars are made from gourds, and they often have a very large gourd up here that really amplifies the sound. But this thing mainly is to look cool.
Is that-
It amplifies the high end a little bit, but it's kind of to balance it, so you rest it like this, to make it look like a sitar. I don't know what I'm talking about, actually. That's what
Thank you.
and it's got a bunch of strings underneath, sympathetic strings. There's half of them broken right now. They vibrate in sympathy with the ones that you play. And so that's what gives it such a big sound. It's like the original reverb system.
It's so amplified.
I'm just hitting one string, but this one up here with the buzzy bridge, that's vibrating in sympathy. The ones under there are. So you strum one note and many strings.
Many strings are vibrating.
Kind of gives it the
Yes.
sound.
Yeah.
And then it's got no frets.
Yes, Sasha.
We usually save questions and answers till the second half so we can.
Your request is to
Keep going with the poetry.
I can do that, if that's a question or a request. Just, I want to read, this isn't poetry, but it's brief, and it's on alchemy. Happiness and awakening being something that is sought after by a certain number of us throughout the ages. Religions and mystery schools and different mystery ways have taught methods that, when used, can help a person move into a greater happiness, a greater awakening in their life, and that's been called alchemy. Inayat Khan speaks now. Sages and mystics have called this process alchemy. The stories of the Arabian Nights, which symbolize mystical ideas, are full of the belief that there is a philosopher's stone. Oh dear. Huh. Here it is right here. There we go. The stories of the Arabian Nights, which symbolize mystical ideas, are full of the belief that there is a philosopher's stone which will turn metals into gold by a chemical process. No doubt this symbolic idea has deluded people both in the East and the West. Many have thought that a process exists by which gold can be produced. This is not the idea of the wise. The pursuit of this gold is for those who are as yet children. For those who have the consciousness of reality, gold stands for light or spiritual development. Gold represents the color of light, and therefore an unconscious pursuit after light has made humanity seek for gold. There's a great difference between real gold and false. It is the longing for true gold that makes a person collect the imitation gold, ignorant that the real gold is within. This one satisfies the craving of his soul in this way, as a child satisfies itself by playing with dolls. A person may follow a religion and yet not come to the realization of truth. Then of what use is this religion if it does not make one happy? Religion does not mean depression and sadness. The spirit of religion should give happiness. A person may follow a religion and yet not come to the realization of truth. But of what use is this religion if there is no happiness? Religion does not mean depression and sadness. The spirit of religion should give happiness. God is happy. God is the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. A religious person, therefore, should be happier than one who is not religious. If a person who is always depressed, melancholy, upset, irritable, and angry, and does nothing but profess his religion, that religion is disgraced. The form has been kept, the spirit lost. If the study of religion and mysticism does not lead to real joy, it may well just as well not exist. It is not fulfilling the purpose of life. As for the question of how this method of alchemy is practiced, the whole process was explained by the alchemists in a symbolic way. They said gold is made out of mercury. The nature of mercury is to be ever moving. A certain process, the mercury is first stilled. Once stilled, becomes silver. Then the silver has to be melted, and the juice of an herb is poured on to the molten silver, which is thereby turned into gold. This, of course, gives only an outline, but one can find detailed explanations of the whole process. The real interpretation of this process is mercury represents the nature of the ever-restless mind, jumpy as hell. The mind is like a restive horse. When it is ridden, it is more restive than when it is in the stable. Such is the nature of the mind. It becomes more restless when one desires to control it. It is like mercury, constantly moving. When by a method of concentration one has mastered the mind, one has taken the first step. Prayer is concentration. Sitting, meditation are all concentration. The secret of this is learned in the science of breath. Breath is the essence of life, the center of life, and the mind may be controlled by a knowledge of proper methods of breathing. When the mind is under control and no longer restless, it must be heated before it can melt. And with what? Love, tolerance, sympathy, like the notes on an instrument, service, humility, unselfishness, in a stream which rises and falls in 1,000 drops, each drop of which could be called a virtue. The love element. And the spring has established itself as a divine stream. After the heart is warmed by the divine element, which is love, the next stage is the sacred herb, which is the love of God. The love of God alone is not sufficient. Merging, unifying, knowledge is also necessary. Things become clear. Then the heart becomes the heart of gold, the heart that expresses what God would express, what God does express. This is spiritual alchemy. Any people consider themselves Christians that are in the audience? That you don't have to answer. There's no compulsion in Sufism. It's an open-ended question. Rumi was an incredible lover of Jesus, and particularly fond of Mary, as are all the poets and all of Islam. Rumi says, your feet take their steps on solid ground, but inside your heart there is a Jesus that walks on water. Your feet take your steps on solid ground. Inside your heart, there is a Jesus who walks on water. Murshid Sam Lewis, he gets very deep in some of his poetry. There's an incredible book. It's called The Song of the Prophets. It's the Jerusalem Trilogy. It's 3 poems. The first one is Judaism. The second one is Christianity. The third one is Islam. And the first 2, Judaism, Christianity, he wrote in the early 1930s. And it's incredibly prophetic. He calls, he foretells the coming of Hitler and all of that to come 12, 15 years after his poetry. That the day of the Lord cometh is the Judaism one. What Christ, what peace is the Christian one. And he self-effaces in the being of Jesus, so he writes as if Jesus. So Sam Lewis is the author, self-effaced in the being of Jesus. And he writes, learn the mystery of heart blood. That a meaning of Adam in Hebrew is he of red blood. The blood which circulates life within the body. The blood which evidences love within the body. The blood leaves the heart and works throughout the flesh. It partakes of worldly things, becoming defiled. By the flesh it is defiled, by lust and appetite. Now we know, I'm interrupting, we know when that heart pulses and the blood goes out into the body, it's oxygenated, it's filled with life, it's living, it has Yahai, the reality of Allah, right in that blood. And by the time it's in the veins and coming back to the lungs, there is no oxygen. That Yahai, that life force, has left that blood. It's blue. It's deoxygenated, denatured by its experience of the world. Returns. The poem continues. It partakes of worldly things, becoming defiled by lust and appetite. This is the psychic blood mentioned in the scriptures. For every spurt of the blood brings psychic power, used by the body and mind in every action. The blood so tinged with earth and experience returns to heaven. It goes into the lung mesh to be cleansed there. Cleansed by the Holy Spirit, the third part of the Trinity. Cleansed by the Holy Spirit in every breath, for the breath is from the Lord and is the Lord. Water and breath and blood testify unto Christ. Let me repeat the law of the living blood. Outward pulse, psychic force aroused, inward beat, purified. This shows the principle of Adam within the body. This gives evidence of the living Christ. Outward Adam, inward Christ. Outward Adam, inward Christ. Pulse, beating pulse. Not in the past, not in the future. Now am I the resurrection and the life. Let me repeat the law of the living blood. Outward pulse. 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 there's a young woman, and she has a new lover. And you know how that is. It's pretty occupying of the mind and the time, and she's all thrilled about that. Hasn't seen her lover, though, for about a week and a half. Oh, dear. And yet this particular day, and isn't certain when she's going to see her lover again. It's a bit open-ended. And yet this day, she gets to see her teacher because she's also a new student in the path. So she goes to meet her teacher, and the teacher lays this very large crate of strawberries down in front of her and says, I have a job for you today. You're to take these strawberries up to this meadow at the top of this trail and deliver them there. And she knows this particular trail. It's hot. And that trail, it's like 3 miles. It's uphill. She's not happy. And she thinks she's going to get to see her teacher and instead gets this duty instead. But she's new. She figures it's a test or something is up. And so she picks up this lug. It's heavy. And these berries are intoxicating. They are perfect. The aroma is such that she can hardly stand it. But she knows it's a test. They've been counted or it's weighed or something. So she doesn't dare eat one. She doesn't know who's watching. So she starts up the trail. And it's kind of heavy and it's hot. And she's starting to sweat. And gosh, I haven't seen my lover in a week and a half. And I thought I finally had a chance to see my teacher. And I get this duty. And this isn't what I wanted to do. And I can't even have one of these berries. This just sucks. And I don't, and on and on and on. And, finally, through this inner dialogue, kvetching and moaning inwardly, gets to the crest and opens up into this meadow, finally. And just across over on the edge of the meadow in the shade of this tree is her lover. And she realizes at that moment all she's supposed to do is take those berries over and put them down next to her lover where the blanket is already laid out and they're for her and her lover. And she says, oh my, falling to her knees, how different my journey would have been if I knew that my beloved was waiting for me at the end. Semesen's turn! Richard Williams, Yahoo. One night, a man was crying, Allah, Allah, Allah. His lips grew sweet with the praising until a cynic came by and said, "So, I have heard you calling out, but have you ever gotten a response?" The man had no answer to that. He quit praying and fell into a confused sleep. He dreamed he saw Hitter, the guide of souls, in a thick green foliage. "Why did you stop praising?" "Because I've never heard anything back." "This longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. This longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. Your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup. Listen to the moan of a dog for its master. That whining is the connection. There are love dogs no one knows the names of. Give your life to be one of them. The gauge of a good poem is the size of the love bruise on your neck. The gauge of a good poem is the size of the love bruise on your neck. The only problem with not castrating a gigantic ego is that it will surely become amorous and father 100 screaming ideas and kids. The only problem with not castrating a gigantic ego is that it will surely become amorous and father 100 screaming ideas and kids who will then quickly grow up and skillfully proceed to run up every imaginable debt and complication of which your brain can conceive. The screaming ideas and kids will quickly grow up and skillfully proceed to run up every imaginable debt and complication of which your brain can conceive. The only problem with with not lassoing a runaway ego is you won't have much desire to sing in this sweet world. If you have been not taking your medicine lately by saying your prayers every day, how can Hafiz seriously listen to all your heartaches about life or God? If you have not been taking your medicine lately by saying your prayers every day, how can Hafiz seriously listen to all your heartaches about life or God? It happens all the time in heaven. And someday it will begin to happen again, right here on earth. That men and women who are married, and men who are lovers, and women who give each other light, will get down on their knees and while so tenderly holding their lover's hand, with tears in their eyes, will sincerely speak, saying, "My dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind?" It happens all the time in heaven. And someday it will begin to happen again on earth. My dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind? It happens all the time in heaven. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and scared. Don't go to the study and read. Take the loot off the shelf. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Rumi's oldest son was named Valed. One thing that really touched me reading of Rumi was a letter he wrote to his son. And we've shared some of his poetry, and the letter sounded something like this. It was about 2 pages long, and it started with, "My dearest son Valed, after talking with your mother in depth about the current situation, both of us feel that you're being hasty in your decision to break off your engagement with this young woman who we love so much. We'd ask you to reconsider this, and it's just like that. It's just absolutely like a father writing to a son. It's not poetic at all. It's just fatherly. I share that just, he wasn't always, writing poetry. He had children and, a regular life, just like everyone else. The moon you love is the same moon Rumi loved. He said it to his time. The moon you love is the same moon Jesus loved. Going to share something again from Sam Lewis. He wrote Jerusalem Trilogy that I mentioned. He also wrote another book. This is 2 books in one. The one I'm going to share from is called Crescent and Heart. I wanted to share from that because the flyer says initiatic poets, Rumi and initiatic poets. And with the musicians here, this is when music joined Sufism in a big way, from a man named Sheikh Moinuddin Chisti, who brought Islam to India from the Mideast in the 1200s. But Islam had been being brought to India militarily in some ugly fashion, and he decided to bring the true message of Islam with a song. And so he brought it on a song. He's buried, interred in Chist, India, and the Chist Sufi lines, which are many from that time, were, in a sense, the musical line of Sufism. And there's other lines of Sufism, Naqshband, which is symbology and some other things. So anyway, that's Moinuddin Chisti, one of the great Sufis of all time. And Sam, at his tomb in India, self-effaced and does not remember writing this poetry, but here it is, and amazing stuff. So here's something on what would be called the mysticism of sound. It's just a brief snippet of Sam's poetry. please. They want to know about metaphysics. They want to know about metaphysics who know not physics. To peer through the telescope who have not yet opened their eyes. How can you know metaphysics who know not physics? And how can you know physics without the knowledge of sound? How can you tell of sound if you cannot sing a single note? Attune your voices to a note, any note. Perfect that note and sing well. Then learn scales. How can you know the scales without the dominant note? So I sang a note, a single note. I asked the angels, tell me of metaphysics. Alhamdulillah, 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 alhamdulillah was all they could say. Then I saw a holy being, and that one answered, sing your note. Learn to sing your note. Perfect your note. Learn to sing your note. I tuned my vina and sang. It was a single note, and I sang. I began, la, 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 la. And it echoed back, oh, 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 oh. And my being sang, Allah, 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 Allah. Then, as the angels did unto humanity, my song brought me back to earth, and I knew metaphysics. And I knew physics also. Metaphysics, the science of God, the unseen. Physics, the science of God, the seen. And there is no science but of God. And there is no knowledge but of God. And there is no being but God. So I took my vina and sang each day my note. And the whole universe burst into song.
Yeah, Khalil. Isn't he great? I've never heard Rumi infused with so much.
Yeah.
Fire.
You're good too.
So Rumi loved Shams, just this incredible love for him. And I think it's unclear as to what exactly their relationship was, but at least they were roommates, So he was very depressed when Shams disappeared at some point in his life. And that depression once inspired me to write a small ecstatic poem myself. It goes, yo, Rumi, why so gloomy? Lost your Rumi? I thought I should not write anymore.
There's a word in Sufism, it's called Vadan. It means the celestial symphonies. It's so pure, it doesn't need words. Clearly. He is a music maestro, and yet Gayan is the divine lyricist. So Gayan, Vadan, the lyricist, the divine musician, and then Nirtan is the third in that trinity, which is the divine choreographer. So you have the lyricist, which is the one lyricist, the one composer, and the one choreographer. And Richard is a beautiful agent of what we would call Vadan, the celestial symphony. And Rumi was Gayan, to say the least. Okay, this is the story of the lake and the three big fish. One of them intelligent, another half intelligent, and the third stupid. Some fishermen came to the edge of the lake with their nets. The three fish saw them. The intelligent fish decided at once to leave, to make the long, difficult trip to the ocean. The intelligent fish decided at once to leave, to make the long, difficult trip to the ocean. This one thought, I won't consult with the other two on this. They will only weaken my resolve because they love this place so. They call it home. Their ignorance will keep them here. When you're traveling, ask a traveler for advice, not someone whose lameness keeps them in one place. Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, love of one's country is part of the faith. But don't take that literally. Your real country is where you're heading, not where you are. Don't misread that hadith. In the ritual ablutions, according to tradition, there's a separate prayer for each body part. When you snuff water up your nose to cleanse it, you ask for the scent of the Spirit. The proper prayer is, Lord, wash me. My hand has washed this part of me, but my hand can't wash my spirit. I can wash this skin, but you must wash me. A certain man used to say the wrong prayer for the wrong hole. He'd say the nose prayer when he splashed his behind. Can the odor of heaven come from our rumps? Don't be humble with fools. Don't take pride into the presence of a spiritual master. It's right to love your home place. But first ask, where is that really? The wise fish saw the men in their nets and said, I'm leaving. Ali was told a secret doctrine by Muhammad and told not to tell it, so he whispered it down the mouth of a well. Sometimes there's no one to talk to. You just must set out on your own. So the intelligent fish made its whole length a moving footprint, and like a deer the dogs chase, suffered greatly on its way, but finally made it to the edgeless safety of the sea. The half-intelligent fish thought, my guide has gone. I should have gone with him, but I didn't. And now I've lost my chance to escape. I wish I'd gone with my guide. Don't regret what's happened. If it's in the past, let it go. A certain man caught a bird in a trap. The bird says, "Sir, in your lifetime, you have eaten cows and sheep by now, and you're still hungry. The little bit of meat on my bones won't satisfy you either. If you let me go, I'll give you 3 pieces of wisdom. One I'll say on the back of your hand, one on your roof, and one from the limb of that tree." The man looked at the scrawny little bird and was interested. He freed the bird and let it stand on his hand. Number 1, do not believe an absurdity no matter who says it. The bird flew and lit on the man's roof. Number 2, do not grieve over what is past. It's over. Do not regret what has happened. By the way, the bird continued, in my body there's a huge pearl weighing as much as 10 copper coins. It was meant to be the inheritance of you and your children. But alas, now you've lost it. You could have owned the largest pearl in existence, but evidently it was not meant to be. The man started wailing like a woman in childbirth. The bird interrupts. Didn't I just say, don't grieve for what's in the past? Oh, and also, don't believe in absurdity no matter who says it. My body doesn't weigh enough to hold a pearl that big inside of me. How could that be? The man came to his senses. Oh, yeah, okay, all right, yeah. Tell me number 3. Yeah, now that you've made such good use of the first 2. I love that line. Don't give advice to someone who's groggy and falling asleep. Don't throw seeds on the sand. Some torn places cannot be patched. Don't give advice to someone who's groggy and falling asleep. Don't throw seeds on the sand. Some torn places cannot be patched. Back to the second fish. The half-intelligent one. He mourns the absence of his guide for a while and then thinks, What can I do to save myself from these men and their nets? Perhaps if I pretend to be already dead, I'll belly up on the surface and float like weeds, just giving myself totally to the water, to die before I die, as Muhammad said. So that fish did that. He bobbed up and down, helpless, within arm's reach of the fisherman. Look at this. The best and biggest fish is dead. One of the men lifted him by the tail and threw him up on the ground. The fish rolled over and over and slid secretly near the water and then back in. Meanwhile, the third fish, the dumb one, was agitatedly jumping about, trying to escape with agility and cleverness. The net, of course, finally closed around that one. And as that fish lay in the terrible frying pan bed, thought to itself, if I ever get out of this, I'll never live again in the limits of this pond. Next time, the ocean. Next time, the ocean. I'll make the ocean my home. Yesterday, glory and joy. Today, a blackened burn everywhere. In the record of my life, these 2 days will be marked down as one. Yesterday, glory and joy. Today, a blackened burn everywhere. On the record of my life, these 2 days will be marked down as one. If your name is Omar, nobody in the town of Kosh will sell you a loaf of bread at any price. You go to a bakery shop and say, "Hello, my name is Omar. I'd like some bread." The baker will reply, "Try the shop down the street. One loaf of his is better than 50 of mine." But if you have healed your eyesight of all duality, you can answer, there is no other bakery. The illumination of that would blind the baker and change your name. As it is, the bakers of Kosh nod, and with tones of voice they know, send you on a wild goose chase around town. Once you have said your name is Omar in one shop, you may as well quit trying to buy bread in Kosh. You're not only seeing double, you're seeing tenfold. You'll never get fed. You move from nook to nook in the ruins of a monastery, thinking, the next prayer place is the place I'm looking for. You move from nook to nook in the monastery, thinking, the next prayer place is the place I'm looking for. Let your eyes see God everywhere. Give up fear and expectation. The friend, the beloved, your soul is a river with the trees and buds of the world reflected in it. And it's no illusion. The reflections are real, real images through which God is made real to you. This river water is an orchard that fills your basket. Be splashed. But not all flowings are the same. Different donkeys take different loads and different persuasive sticks. One principle does not apply to all rivers. For example, inside this river, there is a moon which is not a reflection. From the river bottom, the moon speaks. I travel in continuous conversation with the river as it goes. Whatever is above and seems to be outside this river is actually in it. It all belongs to the friend. Merge with it. In here or out there, as you please. Because this is the river of rivers and the beautiful silence of endless talking. Don't go to sleep one night. What you most want will come to you then. Warmed by a sun inside, you'll see wonders. Tonight, don't put your head down. Be tough. Strength will come. That which adoration adores appears at night. Those asleep may miss it. One night Moses stayed awake and asked and saw a light in a tree. Then he walked at night for 10 years until finally he saw the whole tree illuminated. Muhammad rode his horse through the night sky. The day is for work. The night is for love. Don't let someone bewitch you. Some people sleep at night, but not lovers. They sit in the dark and talk to God. Who told David, those who sleep all night, every night, and claim to be connected to us are confused. Lovers can't sleep when they feel the privacy of the beloved all around them. Someone who's thirsty may sleep for a little while, but he or she will dream of water all night. Listen to the conversation. Stay up. This is all there is. Death will take it away soon enough. You'll be gone, and this earth will be left without a sweetheart. Nothing but weeds growing inside thorns. I'm through. Read the rest of this poem in the dark tonight. Do I have a head and feet? I close my lips. Shams, I wait for you to come and open them.
Don't go back to sleep.
I thought I was the seeker. Found I was the sought. I thought I was the fowler, and in love's snare was caught. I thought I was an entity, and found that I was not. And in love's ecstasy, ceased I from think and thought. And in love's ecstasy, ceased I from think and thought. From minus and from I-ness was I snatched and made a slave. And in my slavery, I found escape from karmic grave. From I-ness and from minus and from I-ness was I snatched and made a slave. And in my slavery I found escape from karmic grave. What happiness in slavery when freedom does deprave. And a song of glory is the essence of the soul. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. Instead of being so bound up with everybody, be everybody. Instead of being so bound up with everybody, be everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you to Richard Williams and Renee and Kiran and all of you for coming.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax deductible. This recording is not copyrighted and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.